Okay, I love that red little live button because you know it's on, you know it's happening. So, welcome to On the Cusp episode 7 with Ronnie, the producer Jordan. So, before I hand over the mic to Ronnie and welcome
Get
to On the Cusp episode 7 with Ronnie. Oh, okay, there you go. So, before I hand it over to him, I have to always take the time to give a little bit of context and preamble to what this show is all about. So, On the Cusp, the tagline, the nudge you've been dying for. 7 shows in, and one thing that I've realized with each guest and each scenario is it's really about creativity. And whether it's on a personal side or professional side, we are ultimately always creating. And I think the show, what it endeavors to do is to provide what I always frame as more tools and more fuel, meaning more perspectives, more ideas, and more inspiration,
right.
and how we can approach some of these personal aspects or professional aspects of our life. So when Ronnie decided to want to do this show with me, I was extremely humbled, and I sat back, and when I was starting to wireframe what I wanted to discuss in the show, I had a laundry list a mile long. Like I had to temper my enthusiasm because music has been a massive part of my life. And the preamble is really to share with the audience and get people kind of thinking, because we welcome questions, we welcome comments, we'll post them up there for, Ronnie to handle if he wants to handle them. But music, Ronnie, for me, started very young. I love dancing. I'm one of those dudes that I love to cut the rug. So if the DJ's, balling and is doing a great job, I'll be there all night dancing. So I started at about age 13 watching MTV back in the day. So we're dating ourselves. So some younger people be like, MTV, what the heck? And I would, mimic all the dance moves. And I remember my mom making a comment to me from the kitchen saying, I want to put you in dance school. I said, Mom, that's where it stops for me, right? I have my limits of how I enjoy music. And then it also played an important role for me in my training. So having been a strength and conditioning coach and competing in powerlifting and whatnot, I would have to find that right track to flip the switch, right? It's a mood changer. It gets into a mindset. So it would either be something really gritty and really hard, a little bit of metal to get that critical lift in, or let's say I was doing something that was more cardio, 180 BPM, and it does the trick, right? And then the last scenario for me was I used to do a lot of painting and faux finishing where you had to work really fast. So I'd throw on some techno. Techno did the trick for me. It got me in the groove and away I went. So anyway, that being said, music is such an important part of my life and why I'm so humble to have an opportunity to discuss that in detail with you. So that being said, Ronnie, I'm going to turn it over to you, and I'm going to ask you the first question to get this show going. Would be, so kind of how did music shape your life? What role did it play in your life, and when did you know that you wanted to be a music producer? So it's kind of three-pronged.
I would probably say this is going back as for me as a little kid. I'm the 7th child of 8 siblings. So this is dating back, man, in the west side of Chicago, the gritty west side of Chicago, man, and growing up with 2 parents that were raised in the South. Music has always been, music is going to be instilled in you from day one, period. Whether it be different genres, it could be gospel music, but definitely soul music. That was my first experience with it. I remember growing up listening to songs that my parents played, man, just constant songs that you hear artists put them on their tracks today. And the funny part is like, you don't want to date yourself, but you hear these songs. It's like, man, I remember when my mom used to play that song, like just constantly, so it's like, wow, it's crazy how things come about and turn around and the way things influence you. But I guess it really came into fruition with me as a little kid, because I remember, my mom used to tell me stories that I used to just crawl into the cabinets, just grab all the pots and pans and just like bang and clank and things like that. I remember, as far back I can remember, that every little thing that I can grab in my hand to create a tone, to create a sound, that's what I did. It could be like, it could be when you're at school, just banging on the desk and creating a rhythm, or like beatboxing with your mouth and things like that. That's been going on way before the Timbaland days and things and stuff like that. He just put it in the mainstream, but we've been doing that since since forever. So how it came into fruition with me, I remember um, playing guitar, and I've been a guitar player for many years, probably like a little over uh, 20 to 30 years. I lost count. I don't want to date myself, but but how it came into fruition for me by me playing locally in Chicago and people seeing me play in different casual settings and getting asked to do gigs and things like that. That's what catapulted the music creation process for me. Gigging around the Chicagoland area, blues gigs, R&B gigs, and things like that. But what set it off, as far as the production, I've only been producing since about 2002, believe it or not.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so since about 2002. I was in LA playing for a friend of mine who's a musician, but he was also a seasoned producer way before I started doing it. And I remember in between a gig, he had a session with a rapper, and it was really really interesting to me, and it was intriguing to me, that process of putting things down on tape, putting things down to make that idea, or to make that idea come to fruition. That's what got me interested. After that, man, I just bought a computer. It's really a simple story. I just bought a computer, bought Logic and Pro Tools, man. It was just sink or swim. It was just, just trying to find my way into the production part of it. I would probably say maybe about 4 to 5 years doing it, and to know that I can make this music thing or this production thing as a reality. I started working with the artist, and he's actually a pretty known actor now, or a moderately known, or pretty known. His name is Rotimi. Rotimi Akino Show. He was actually on a show in the States that's called Power.
Okay.
But that was before. But I produced a bunch of tracks with him way before he got on as an actor.
Nice.
So it actually, you say to yourself, it's like, okay, so if this is good enough for this cat, then yeah, I can definitely do something with this. So the production thing has been ongoing for me since then. A lot of things that I had to learn about it. You had to learn not only the production aspect, you had to learn the polishing of the song aspect, the mixing aspect, the laying the vocal aspects, and things like that. The journey has been fun, and I definitely really enjoy what I do as far as the creative process, and I know definitely I found my niche, but I definitely love the foundation I have in being a musician first. And I think that's probably what separates me from everybody else, because of the musician aspect. Because I went from old school playing, you got to pick up an instrument, into going into technology.
Right.
So that in itself was like, okay, so how does an older head goes and go into and recording something using technology, and still make those things sound authentic, how to keep them soulful, how to get the best out of the artist and things like that. So yeah, it was a process, but I learned that process through trial and error. I learned it.
Well, I love a few things to extract a few nuggets there that I really enjoy
Hmm.
you saying is like, one, getting and gaining the confidence to say, "Hey, I'm making the right decision here in my life." To, you said in 2002, where I thought you've been at this. I'm not going to date you. I thought you've been at this longer than that. And then
Definitely.
realizing, like, hey, you're good enough, quote unquote, to work with that gentleman that's now, a well-known actor, where you go, oh, okay, starts to build your confidence. And then
Yeah.
you want to reach out to be able to say, I can do this and I can do that. So I relate to that piece for sure, especially having worked
Hmm.
with clients over the years. The
Yeah.
other thing is, uh, the coming from old school and marrying that up with all this technology you have today. And you said something, and striving to still make it sound authentic. We'll go a little bit deeper down the rabbit hole, I'm sure, as we get further
Hmm.
conversation around
Yeah.
technology and all those things, and how do you do it, is really fascinating to me, where when you're in the creative process, what do you realize where you go like, I've hit this, I've hit the track. I don't need to tinker with it anymore. Leave it alone. It's good, right? So we'll talk more about that. So,
Mhm.
what genres were your main influences growing up? What did you enjoy listening to the most? I know I like it all as long as it's assembled
Yeah.
and put together nicely, but do you have some go-tos that are your faves?
You know what? I'm glad you asked that question because my musical influences, I like to benchmark different phases of my life as far as what music influenced me. So as a little kid, it was R&B soul. Period. It was that. That's what I listened to. So that was the foundation. As a little kid, probably like 5, 6, 7 years old. But as far as being a younger adult or a teenager, I would probably say it was the MTV era,
Okay.
and it was basically, honestly, it was pop music because soulful pop music. I'm talking about like Hall and Oates, these and Prince, all these other cats that came up in the '80s. So the '80s was a focal point as far as me being able to be a multi-genre producer because back in the '80s during our pre-MTV era or around the MTV era, though, you had certain songs that's all you heard on mainstream radio because black music before the MTV era wasn't really played as much until these artists in the States put their foot down, like Michael Jackson and Prince, and told MTV, hey, um, if you're not going to play this, we're just going to boycott this. So, and it was before they started playing the Michael Jackson, before the Thriller album came about and sold like a gazillion copies.
Yeah,
So
it did.
it was those things. So it was listening to the Hall and Oates. It was listening to songs like different things, metal like Def Leppard, Queen, um, things like that. And believe it or not, I had an older brother who passed away years ago, and he actually introduced me to Queen. And
Okay.
I knew about when I was listening to Queen and Freddie Mercury and stuff like that since like the '80s. So it was crazy to see all that music come back because I knew all that, I knew all that before. But it's funny about being a black guy growing up in the hood. Those were some guilty pleasures, like how do you know about them? I know about Queen, I know about all that stuff. Like I'm trying to think of these songs, like these popular '80s songs, like groups like Heart, stuff like that. But if you look into my musical library, man, I have everything from man, Dr. Dre. You could see Dr. Dre in my musical library to Lenny Kravitz. It's wild. It's just like all over the place. But I love that because when I make a song, I don't have a particular genre in mind when I create a song. It's
Okay.
what I hear. And I think that's really good. And as far as what's good for me, because it doesn't put me in a box.
I
Pretty
like.
much. So yeah.
Yeah, that's perfectly said. And we chatted in the studio. It's funny because studio. It's a word we throw around. I got my little studio. So Ronnie and I were chatting about that. Kind of like what do we have in our vinyl library? And I think that what makes you so versatile and being able to lead and develop an aspiring artist to
Hmm.
pretty much create in their mind's eye what to be their best track. So having all those influences is great. And you bring something up that I'm reflecting on, and I had an older brother, and I remember he'd be listening to music in his room, and I'd be like, "What is that?" I remember him listening to Deep Purple, and I remember him listening to Pink
Hmm.
Floyd and hearing the song "Money,"
Uh-huh.
chinging of the music,
Me too. Pink
right?
Floyd and Queen.
And
Yeah.
I'd be in my room going,
Yeah.
"What is that?" I was listening to Steve
Yeah.
Winwood and
Yeah.
all that stuff. So that's the nice thing about older siblings because, or
Hmm.
even friends when you get introduced to, oh, yeah, have you listened to this artist? And you take a listen, and you go, wow, I didn't even know they existed, but they've been around for 30 years, and you're like, where have I been, under a rock? So
Right.
that's the thing about music, right? So it doesn't surprise me that you have such a vast library. Now, being so versatile and having so much at your fingertips to be able to create, are you comfortable with all genres? Because if I throw up we're going to throw up your Instagram here just for people to see, right?
Hmm.
Multi-genre producer. So here you go. If you want to start following Ronny and all what he does, which is brilliant, there it is. So is there a genre where you're like, this feels like home, and then other ones you're comfortable with, but is there one that feels more like home to you?
I would probably say the one that feels more like home is R&B. That feels a little bit more like home, but for the most part, they all do. Because for me, the musical process it's a casual process, but it's intense at the same time. So it's a weird dichotomy. It's weird. It's casual and it's intense at the same time, and it really depends on the artist that I'm working with. Because now, when you listen to music now, for me, I don't think it's really one. They're all are separate and separated by genres. But when you really listen to the elements that are in music now, the drums they use and things like that, it's basically all the same now. It's really just the attack. It's
Okay.
really how the artist is singing the music. He's singing the song. Elements are all the same. Like Trixie Fender, her album that I did about 2 years ago. Um, it's a lot of R&B trappy elements to that, but that whole album is just straight pop.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
just straight pop. And there's another artist that I'm working with. Her name is Sochi, XO Chicago. She's on, and her project's about to drop. Um, and she's a Mexican American young lady who loves R&B music. So it's really a thing. And with her project that I'm using, that I did, it was more so the elements were more so old school. It's live drums. It was a mixture of live drums. It's a mixture of trappy R&B drums, or trappy R&B elements. So it's really a big stew of who you're working with and what they want to do. And I think a lot of producers now, and I don't want to get off on a tangent, but for
Tangents
me,
are
what
good, my
works for
friend.
me, and I know for me, when you're a producer, and the big mistake most producers do, they think of themselves as an artist,
Okay.
and you can't. And my thing is, a producer is a servant of the artist. We're here to make them. To me, I'm here to make the artist bring into fruition their vision. Because if you let an ego of me being an artist get in the way of letting the artist you're working with be the best they can be, it's gonna show in the finished product. And that would, that's where things clash. That's where things clash. So
Well, what you said there, Ronnie, just blows my mind, and that's why I think I always enjoy the process of having these shows and what people say,
mhm,
what they say, in the ego. You said ego, and there's something that I'm always talking about, even at work, and how the ego gets in the way of
mhm.
greatness and beautiful things. It's just static and noise and friction, and
Yeah.
and the fact that there's that humility in your work, and that you're looking to serve. You're looking to serve. I said my life's been all about servitude as well, and
Mhm.
and that's a great brand that you bring as a producer. So I really applaud you for that. I'm going to throw up, because I was watching some of these videos myself yesterday, and the one person you were just talking about, if you want to go check her workout and Ronnie's workout on YouTube, this is the lady that he's referring to, and pretty cool stuff. I love the song; it's got a really good feel to it. And and you talked about Trixie Fender. I'll
Yeah.
throw this one up too. So here's another link that you could go check out. Now, I love this video. I like
Uh-huh.
the way it's done. It got so many different flavors, but the flavor I like, because I know you a little bit more now, is that you're in there with your guitar doing your thing, and it's just such a really nice marriage between the what they're doing on their vocals, and the beats, and then there you are with your guitar. So I have to say, if you're viewing, go check this out. This is really cool. More of Ronnie's work. So um, you talked about the elements and what goes into them, and so there's obviously, we're going back to software now, so there's a lot of software that goes into the work. We touched on a couple of things, but I want to get a little bit more specific around. Let's start with, what are all the things that you've seen change in the industry that you're in, pros and cons, and maybe start there, and then we'll talk about how technology plays in the role, like what instruments that you have to put in there that are not present for the artist, right? So,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
how all that's done, I have a little bit of exposure to that world and how, you insert, you layer. Anyway, so how much have you seen change pros and cons in this industry, especially for, because I know there's a young producer. He follows you on Instagram. He's a son of a best friend of mine. So if he's watching, which I'm sure he is, I told him to watch because he learned something. Is how much has changed, pros and cons in your industry?
Well, the pro is with technology. Technology closed the gap um, for people or for young producers, male or female, to create something and put it and make it into a reality. So it definitely closed the gap, and it actually fuels me because if this 16-year-old or 15-year-old, 18-year-old comes with something hot, that motivates me
Okay.
in doing something, in doing something hotter. So um, things like programs like Splice, which is a company. Well, let me just backtrack. Back when producing first really producing from home first really came to light and it got hot and people could make tracks from home, people used to have to just record and like if they hear something that motivates them in making a track or that influenced them in making a track, they would have to sample it. They have to do it the long way and things like that. So there are companies now like Splice. You hear an element that gets the ideas cooking.
Okay.
So you can hear a little piano loop and you can build around that. And then when you get back to the song, you're not using that same loop. You're like, okay, that inspired me, but I can take that out. I'm not using it anymore. Or you can leave it in there. And things are legally, it's easier because all those things are copywritten, they're paid for. So there's no back end that you have to pay the person who did those samples and things like that, which is cool. Or you can make them and freak them into your own thing, which is cool as well. So technology, as far as that goes, being able to start the creative process has came a long way because I remember when I first started, as I said, I used to have to just live record the drums, and there's a process that's called MIDI, and used to have to just put in every note or play your own drums live, and then just tighten them up into the software so they're on sync with the track or with the click track. And now, man, things you just click a button and things are just easier now. But the cons to that is creativity and knowing where things come from and knowing the foundation of music theory, knowing the foundation on what the formula is in a good song, what moves a track, how to get the best out of a vocalist, the best performance out of a vocalist, things like that. So it to me, for lack of better words, it gets you. You can, if you're not careful, it can get you lazy to a point.
Okay.
So if you're on Splice and you hear an element, you hear a drum loop that gets you inspired. Instead of challenging yourself and just using that drum, excuse me, that one drum loop, um, go into your brain and create something yourself that goes into it instead of just going in and okay, let me find something else that'll go with it. Let me find something else that'll go with it. Let me find something else that'll go with it. Which is nothing wrong with it in itself because the process is the process, and I never knock who anybody's creative process. But for me, um, that's how I approach it for it. So it's the technology can have its pros. It has its advantages. It has its disadvantages for it. And I think another thing that um, if you're a producer, and anybody who's watching, what you really want to get a hold of and tweak are your mixing skills, getting the final product on the record. And that's a skill that takes time because it takes time to develop your ear, but to be cognizant on how you want it to be is going to pay dividends. And in the long run for yourself as an artist and things like that as a producer, for the artist as a producer. So um, it's a dichotomy of a whole lot of different things that you have to get a grasp of, but at the end of the day, still have fun with the process.
Very cool. I love that. Still have fun with the process, even though you're grinding it out. So, if I
Yeah.
heard you correctly, Ronnie, so technology is great because of its convenience. You have a lot more at the ready at your fingertips to create. However,
Hmm.
if that's all you've really had as far as molding your education or exposure, it can somewhat stifle your imagination. Would that be
Yes,
sort of
it can stifle your imagination, and it can stifle it big time if you're not careful. So that's that's why I'm really careful with it at times. So, but how I combat that is that if I hear an element, I can have whoever in the studio with me. We don't know what the hell we're gonna do. We don't know what's on our minds or anything like that. So, so I'm just in here and I'm playing. I could play a bass line. I could play a drum loop. Um, However they go with it, or however melody line that they give me, that's how I create from that standpoint.
okay?
So I'm never when at the beginning of the creative process, I'm always careful not to overproduce it. I always want to see how the artist is going with this, how they're singing the track melodically or how they're doing the track. So therefore that gets me to saying, hey, as long as you give me what you got, I know I'm gonna do with it. I just want to hear what you had, like singing it melodically. Whether it can suck or not, you might not even go with that melody. Just give me what you got. So therefore that gets me going as far as creating more on that track. So my secret is I do as least as possible, and I have them give me the vocals, and I add the sauce, I add the the dressing and things like that. So they give me the main course. That's the meat. I just get the sides. I get the stuffing. I get the macaroni and cheese on the side. I get the greens on the side and things like that for it. That's pretty much that's what works for me, and it has been working for that.
That is super cool. I really appreciate your analogies. You talk a lot like me, metaphors and similes,
Yeah.
not, conjure up a picture. And I'm just, if you see me looking down, I'm jotting notes because you say stuff that I latch onto and I don't want to lose sight of. So,
Hmm.
you talk about sort of just being in the background, almost in the shadow, and giving that maybe that comfort to your artists to just kind of do their thing and just tinker and play. And then, like you said, you'll kind of maybe add a little bit of this or your secret sauce or whatever that you feel that needs to go there. Um, so for me, it's always fascinating because artists are ultimately trying to tell a story. For most cases, there are songs out
Yeah.
there that it's just a great, um, it's just a great song to dance to. It just got a great beat, and then
Right. Right. Right.
So we talked about it in the studio before going live, and there's a couple of individuals I find that are out there. And oftentimes, I've gone through that in life, is oftentimes I would listen to a song and be like, oh man, I can just groove to it and dance. It feels good. It gets me moving. It gets me in a state of mind that's, maybe
Yeah.
up and happy.
Yeah.
And then, after
Absolutely.
a few years, you stop and you go, well, let me look at the lyrics while that song's playing. And you're like,
Yeah.
damn, I didn't know that person was saying all that. And now that makes that song just that
Hmm.
bigger and more amazing. And
Hmm.
what I'm driving at is I'm sure
Yeah.
there's artists that you work with who come to you with very personal ideas and wanting for that to be honored and done correctly. So I'm migrating towards a little bit of the coaching side of what you have to do. So kind of back to what you said, they're just doing their thing, they're freestyling and
Hmm.
what to add. So how much goes into coaching for you? Because I'm sure there's sometimes, I wouldn't say a conflict, but different ideas. Because I know that sometimes I know what I'm thinking, but then to get Ryan to the producer to understand what I want to go with my track or my song. So how does that look for you as a producer?
When I hear, as far as the coaching aspect, when I hear the direction of an artist is going, vocally or lyrically or melodically, that comes into back when we first started the conversation on music influences in the past. Um, and a lot of people hear these things, they hear these influences, but they don't know where these influences come from. So my theory is, or the way I approach it is that if I hear a artist and they're attacking a song and it reminds me, man, you know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of this old man. This you remember the group DeBarge, like you sound like El DeBarge on here. That's how you attacking it. You know what? You might want to, you might want to do it like this because this is what I'm hearing. And when they're like, well, who is this person? Who is El DeBarge? Whatever. How am I attacking this? I'll play a record for them. And they're like, oh wow,
Awesome.
that's oh, my parents used to my parents used to listen to this. Okay, so but it was subliminally in your brain. You didn't know it was in your head. So it could be that, or some artists you don't really have to explain it to, and you would hear something that's like, okay, this sounds like, man, it sounds like you're trying to attack this like who you're trying to attack this like Madonna or somebody like that. Like one of those 80s songs. So let's do a background or let's stack a vocal like this so we can get this vision out, to get this melody or to get this vocal line up to the next level, or this harmony line the next level. So it really depends on the artist I'm working with and how I attack it. But I normally attack it, or I normally address it with logic for them instead of just like, hey, yeah, I want you to do this under this, or I want you to sing it this way because of such and such singing like this. It's really, you just have to really let them understand on how you got to this point and why I was successful then, and show them that it was successful by them, by this artist.
I
At that
love
time.
I love that comparison. Is again,
Mhm.
you're as a professional coach really and creator, is you're helping them with the why and giving them context
Mhm.
and background, and then the
Yeah.
person going versus just saying, hey, this is the direction we want to go into because I know
Yeah.
better. It goes back to
Yeah.
what you shared earlier around your serving, and part of that serving is leading people to the water, if you will, by
Yeah.
with
Yeah.
grace and creatively putting things in
Yeah.
front of them to consider, right? To
Right.
consider, right? Not
Yeah.
trying to force your ideas or perspective onto that person because they're looking to create as well and they want to feel good about that as well. A curious question for me, Ronnie,
Yeah.
because songs are like short stories, mini books,
Mhm.
if you will, especially if there's
Yeah.
a personal aspect to the track. Um, is there ever a writer's block, a track writer's block? Does that exist in the creative process where you kind
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
like,
It does. It
okay,
does. As far as lyricist, I'm not a great lyricist at all. I can admit my shortcomings. I'm not a good lyricist. I can hear something melody on a track that I do, but it's like for putting in the words, it's like, oh no, forget it. But it's I do a lot, so I figure like that. I'll take that. I'll take that shortcoming. But as far as block, yeah, there's blocks as far as me creating a song because it's weird for me because I know it when I hear it, but if it doesn't resonate with me of a track that I do right off the top, I normally go away from it and start something else. But I still keep it to the side because it's important to keep those things and come back to them because you can have an artist in the studio with you and you can open up that session where you only got like 4 tracks and you have a little melody line and maybe like a kick, a hi-hat and a snare just going into a drum pattern. And they hear something that you don't. And that galvanizes you to like, oh, okay, you like that? Oh, you like that shit? Okay. Oh, well, this is what I hear on it now since you put it like this. So like a creative block, to get out of it, I normally have artists help me get out of a creative block. So if it's like going on too long or too bad, I'll call the artist and say, hey, what are you doing? Hey, let's get something done. Let's get something done today because I have an idea. I don't know exactly how to do it, or exactly where I want to go with it, but maybe we can collab together and and finalize something or get something going. So getting help, getting out of creative block helps more. You got to get out your own way and get out of your own pride and realize that. That's why I really don't get in too many. I probably only got in maybe my while doing this, as long as I've been doing it, maybe 3 times where it's been a bad one, where it's been a bad block, where it's like it's like a 2 or 3 days where I have to just keep trying and keep trying. And the good thing to do and what I learned to do, walk away from it, man. Just go enjoy your family, watch the ball game, do something, come back to it. Don't get frustrated with it because it's all a part of things. Um, Things aren't going to be a hit all the time. This whole musical process is all trial and error. Um, it's a great story in theory when you hear your favorite songs that stood the test of time and you like to think they just came in, they hit right then and there. But most of the time, 99% of those things, it was a process. It was probably a shorter process than others. It was just all a process. Bottom line.
And I love that. Well, again, life is a process, right?
Yeah.
Creating is a process, and
Yes.
for those great things to actually come to fruition, which is a word you use that I like,
Hmm.
is about trial and error. Is about
Hmm.
being, again, humble enough to go, okay, you know what? I mean, it's not quite, I'm not feeling it's not quite there. Stepping away from it, not just completely kind of giving
Uh-huh.
up on it. So that being said, so how do you know you arrived at Grand Central Station with your artist on a track where you both look at each
Hmm.
other and go, damn, that's it right there. And it's a wrap and it's done. And you don't want to touch it again. You don't want to tinker again. You just how do you know that? How do you both arrive at that?
It's, you know what? It's a funny story. An artist that I work with, they'll probably tell you that too. When they're doing a vocal line, it's weird. It's weird for me. When they do a vocal line and I hear that first verse of this song, and after they do that first take, I just start giggling. And they're like, "What are you laughing at?" I'm like, "Yeah, this is gonna be a problem. This song is gonna be a problem." And they know it's just something that's in me, and it's like, okay, this is gonna be a problem right here. And it's and that galvanizes them because they know. So we all have to reinforce each other. But as far as like when it's when a song is finally done, and here's the thing though, this is what I'll run into with artists sometimes, and when you work with artists, and you really have to be careful with it because you don't want to limit their creativity, but then it's sometimes you have to um, let them know where you don't want to get to the point where you over vocalize it. Just like as a producer, I don't want to get to the point where I overproduce. You
Okay.
don't want to get to the point where you overdo it. So I can add elements to a song or to a beat that an artist is doing, but I have to stop and think to myself, I'm like, man, is this a want or a need? Do I need to have this on here? And you have to really put yourself as the listener. So is this person is listening to this track? Are they really going to hear this 18-part harmony? There's one little note I did in this harmony on this song that's going to be way back in the mix, or do you just leave it alone and let it breathe and let the process be the process? And that's the thing that a lot that I struggle with sometimes on the production side. I can have a song, I can mix, and I can hear something, and I think I'm finished with the mix, and I can hear, well, man, this part of the vocal is a little bit too louder, and I'm thinking to myself, walk away from this song, right? The song is mixed and it's done because like the listeners are not even gonna pay attention to that. They're not gonna pay attention to that at all. Um, it's not you just have to be cognizant and know when to walk away, and it's not that perfect time that you just have to just keep saying to yourself, okay, this is what it's going to be. And a part of the process is going back and learning from the mistakes you did. You have to allow yourself to hear those mistakes and let it wash over you instead of striving for perfection all the time, because perfection, and this, perfection is the number one enemy of an artist.
Mm,
Period. And if you strive for that way too much, it'll hinder things. It'll hinder things. You have artists that want the perfect release date. They want the perfect ending to a song. They want the perfect this to a song, the perfect that to a song, and nothing's gonna be that way. It's just a reality of it. So you just have to put things out in the universe, and then let it not hear it for a while, and then listen back to it. I'm like, okay. So for me as a producer, and I hear this song again, I'm like, you know what? I could have put those vocals up more in this track. It's still hot. I love what I did, but man, I could have raised those vocals up. But I don't get bent out of shape about it because I know when I work with this artist again, oh, I know how to do this. I'm raising those vocals up like on this next track. Okay, yeah, I need to do this. So it's you have to let the mistakes wash over you in order to improve.
wow,
Period.
wow. That is telling your authentic approach to your craft, Ronnie. Which I just sit here and I just all that went through me like an X-ray. Genuinely, it really does. Is again, honesty is a catalyst for growth, and that's what you're always doing with yourself as an exercise, right? You're always going to school, right? It's like, okay, yeah, you know
Hmm.
what? more tools in my toolbox, more in my back pocket, going forward, the next one. And that's what I think real artistry is always. You talked earlier before going live about, getting outside the box, instead of this box is given to you, which is as well what, if you leverage just technology, you stay in that box versus that imagination running wild. And so I really appreciated that part around, like, okay, next time, or the specifically the point you made about the listener's probably not even going to notice. I have a real appreciation for that. I've had 2 clients over the years who were in the music business, in the music industry. The one guy talked a lot difference between a studio musician or a studio artist versus a person who can do live. Some live musicians are not, strong in the studio. And I'm like, what are you talking about? What do you mean?
It's a such thing, definitely.
Right. And he shared some of the people he worked with. And I was like, okay, well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
While we spent time together in our sessions, he'd be like, hey, you hear that? I'm like, yeah, I love this song. He goes, but do you hear this thing or that thing? Or, behind the scenes, like the layers, or, a guitar that I never heard before. Being the listener, that's what you're kind of driving at for me. And that really helps, because I get to listen to a song and I go, I love it. I don't know why I love it, but it's the way the producer assembled all those things the subconscious is taking in. So whether it's a little higher, a little lower, but anyway, that's my tangent of really appreciating the work you do, because oftentimes we as the listener do not approach the fullness and the totality of how it's all perfectly syncopated, orchestrated, so that you get this, that you sit there and go, hey, I could play this album all day long. So I love the examples that you use there. So talking about studio artists or musician versus, live. So what are some distinctions there? Because that always fascinates me as a person who says, that's a really good studio artist or singer versus a live person. So
here's the thing, that the talent is the same. There's 2 categories now. A studio musician, guitar player, drummer, whoever, they're going to be tight, period, all the time. That's it. You let them do their thing. They play their parts. They play their parts of the track. You can always go in and edit the things that you want or don't want, things like that. But as far as a studio singer or a studio artist, the best way I can describe it, think of it as you have a motion picture that you go see at the movies, but you still see that motion picture adaptation on stage. And on a stage, they're acting bigger, they're louder. It's more it's more of that, whereas more on the motion picture side, it's more tame. That's the same thing with studio singers and singers who sing live all the time. They sing live all the time. So it's certain parts of the song where it's like, where I see myself sometimes like, that's cool what you just did, but we're gonna say that for the live version. So stay in this type of pocket. So you kind of have to actually kind of coach them into the song build up, because a live singer doesn't go into the build up. They hit, it's big right off the top. It's big right off the top. Where a song tells a story, so a song has to build. So first verse is subtle. Second verse, okay, we getting right in the middle. Then that third and last verse, take it home from that point. So yeah, they learn that as they go along. But the studio singer is gonna just stay in this one pocket all the time. And then on the flip side of that, you have to coach them into, hey, take this part big. I need you to go with your ad libs. I just need you to go in with this. So it's pros and cons. It's different sides of the coin to both. A person who sings live, as far as my experience, as far as like on the writing tip, it's more of a challenge for them, because they're used to singing top 40. They're used to singing covers and things like that, where they do have writing ability, but they're not sold on their talent, because they're used to singing songs that are already validated. So they have trouble validating themselves.
Okay.
They're waiting for validation from other people. So the artists that I work with like that, it's like, you know what, write the song fuck these other people, what they're thinking. Is this what you want to write about? Okay, then you write about it. You do it. Don't second guess it. Don't second guess it. You're not with your band on a Friday night, at your gig. God bless you, make your money. You want a live gig, and I love it. I love going to a live gig. I love cover bands and they're singing covers. Don't get me wrong, I love it because I'm a musician. But when you're in the studio, you're doing your own thing. Get that out your head, do your own thing, make your own mark on it. There's nothing wrong with having those influences, but do your own thing. And that's a struggle mostly all the time when you work with the live singers,
Okay.
because of that. So it's a fine line, and they have to be really careful with it. But when you do a song with them and they're playing it live, the upside to that, when they do the live version of it, man, it's balls to the wall.
Very. Love it. Those are lyrics in a song. Love it.
Yeah.
I appreciate the distinction there, Ronnie. Really. So when you're working with an artist, you're looking to build a studio version of a track, and also, fashioning a live version as well for them. And thank you. I love that analogy between kind of cinema, screen versus almost like being on stage doing it. What I'm looking for is, you're down in New York at Radio City Music Hall on stage. So that really helps me out. Now, you said something that I like is working with an artist and saying, do what you want to do. Do what you want to do. And I think if I hear that right, and hopefully you'll elaborate for me, is them finding the courage to find their own voice and their own thing, versus it's comfortable to sing cover songs because we know everybody loves them. I got great vocals. I went to Nashville 2 times, and man, Nashville, man, what a great time. I remember being, hopping bars. The music's all really good there because
it's all music.
It's all just amazing because the best of the best of the best are trying to make it right, and they're there showcasing what they do. And I remember being at Tootsie's, rooftop, and it was $20, American. Being a Canadian, I was paying a premium for each song that I wanted to hear. And it was interesting because this girl was absolutely off the hook, and she just go on this app. We'll get back into technology in a moment. She would just go on this app and say, "Oh yeah, okay, sure, boom," and then she turned to the band, and away they went, and then they would sing the song. But to come back to saying, finding the courage and your true voice to put something out there, it must be scary for some artists because they're taking a chance, right? So what's the conversation look like? I mean, other than just flip and do it, man, it's gonna be great, and I'll walk you through the process. I mean, there must be some emotional times in your studio, Ronnie. I'm guessing.
Yeah, it's at times it can be. At times it can be. And then what I elaborated on a little while ago is them finding their own sound. It's not that they came to me and admitted it. It's by me really being observant and noticing it. And then most of the time they won't even, whether they know it or not, they're not really going to say too much about it. Because let's just be real. Like your shortcomings, it's not easy to talk about shortcomings, man. You just keep that 100. You're not. It's hard to do it. It's hard for me to do it. It's a process of being comfortable with that. But it's really how you dissect it with the artist, and to get them to realize it. And then after you dissect it, is to get them to trust you with it, with that process. And that's the main thing with it. And it's not there's some producers, they're like, hey, this person can't write, I'm getting frustrated, blah, blah, blah. I don't see the frustration in something that, I never see a frustration in people who have a lot of potential, because there's going to be frustrations that what separates you between with other people is working through those things. And if you can't work through those things, you're not going to be successful at anything you do. That could be this production, that could be anything. You're not going to be successful. It's always going to be a challenge, because you're going to run into those challenges all the time. You may just brush this artist to the side because they're a live singer and their writing capabilities are questionable, and to go to this person who can just write just a song in like 20 minutes. But there's always going to be a challenge because this person who I could probably have write a song in 20 minutes, it's always a maybe a slight creative difference where they don't know when the song is finished. So it's always going to be two sides of the coin of it, everything. You just have to is learning and picking and choosing these battles wisely for it. It's key for me.
There's a lot of wisdom that you're sharing, Ronnie. A lot of wisdom. I love it. So there must be some moments too, speaking to, the relationship, really it's what it is. And you bring up the
Hmm.
word trust, and with an environment of trust, I think that's the
Hmm.
only time things can really blossom. I think that's the only time any creative project can soar and just be, unbridled and just have fun with it. Again, you said you got to be having fun.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
sure there's times maybe that there's an artist that's like, I'm not sure, Ronnie. I don't know if they sound, and you're like, well, you know what? Just leave it with me, right? They're trying to find, I guess, that confidence in themselves, and then you go away in your bat cave and you do a little playing around, and then you come
yeah,
back for your next engagement, and you go, here's Steph, what we recorded. Here's what I kind of just playing around for a little bit. So there must be moments like that where an artist turns to you and goes, I didn't know that was possible. I didn't
yeah.
know I could and we could sound like that. So
Yeah, yeah. It's been a bunch of times where there's an artist, and they do a great vocal take, decent vocal take, but you can tell they're not sure, they're not real comfortable with it. I take that. I'm like, okay, you're not really that cool with it. You're not sold on it. I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you, even though it was your lyrics, your ideas, and things like that. But that comes back to what we talked about again. Artists second guessing themselves. Let me just play with it for a little while, and then most of the time they're in the studio. So I'm like, okay, so just go ahead and work on the second verse. Let me know what you need to do, and I'm in here. I'm doing my thing. I'm EQing the vocals and things like that, letting them sit right in there, and they're hearing it. They're like, okay, that's when they get it. That's when they get it. It's a process of like it's a process that we said like a billion times during this interview. It's a process, and you have to learn to trust the process. And they're like, well, I'm off on sing. I'm my notes are off singing it this way and blah blah blah. Don't worry about it. Throw a little out your window. Let's just so you can get the idea of this vision. Don't worry about it yet. Now, when they get it, it's like, okay, now you see. Let's go back and do a tighter take on this vocal because you believe in it now.
yeah,
You believe in it now. Let's get a tighter take on
amen. Believing in it.
it.
So I oftentimes will put together, podcast information, information together, and I play with the Apple computer a bit and I record. And there'll be days I'm not in the pocket. I'm tripping over my words.
Mhm.
I'm struggling to get my idea out, and I replay it, and I go, "Man, you sound silly. Like this doesn't make any sense." And then I've done
Yeah.
many times walking away, just swearing, screaming into my pillow.
Mhm.
And so it's all performance, right? You're performing,
Yeah.
really, ultimately what
Yeah.
you're doing,
Yeah.
and you're trying to give a viewing audience or a person who's going to be even, you know, entertaining, wanting to listen to you, um, an aspect of yourself. And having worked with clients in my previous crafts for a long time, not every day is created equal. Somebody's
No, it's not.
not in the pocket. So I'm just curious on your end. Say you have a scheduled day for like all day recording in the studio with an artist, and that artist is just not in the pocket. But you got to get to work. The job's got to get done. So what kind of things do you do to help an artist? you know, calm the noise, quiet the noise, and get to task and getting into that believing we're gonna crush this and it's gonna feel good.
The normal approach I do is nothing really it's I guess in a sense it's kind of psychological, but it comes back into the technology. So there's a pass that they do on the first verse. Um, I just set it up where the song loops, they go and do these passes on. I want different textures of this, how you're singing it. If you're not sure, there's days I have an artist, they're not sure how they're singing the song. Oh, I don't think I had the right approach to it and blah, blah, blah. So I have them record and do at least like 12 passes on a vocal. And all these passes of these takes are stacking. If I can visualize it correctly, they're stacking. And when they're done, I'm like, okay, that's all I need. So I hear this one take. I'll take a little bit off the first take. I'll take a little bit off the third take. I like this little phrasing that you did on this 8th take, so I'm going to use that. And I splice a good vocal together for them. So yeah, it's always a way to go about it. So I don't think that, I guess in a sense when they hear it, it's psychological. It's like, oh, I thought I sucked today, but I didn't. Or no, you really didn't suck today. It's just that you just need, it's different ideas, and it's not a right or wrong way. You just needed to put these ingredients together to have that dish, because it's not all, it's everything that you approach is not always going to be black and white all the time. You have to put everything together to have that one common or final product. And there's nothing wrong with not being sure how you're going to sing it, or how you want to sing it, or how you want to attack it. Let's just get past it, so it doesn't hinder the creative process too long. That's it.
That's so cool. And I'm
Yeah.
going to reciprocate and be able to say that I appreciate everything you just said around, the splicing piece and that technology piece, and realizing like, oh, okay, it really wasn't that bad, because they're in the moment and they're feeling and experiencing that it's not jiving, right? It's just not jiving. And
Yeah.
years ago, a friend of mine, he does documentaries. He's a filmmaker, and I used to train and prepare him for his treks to Everest and whatnot. And he goes, I want to make you a promo video. You need a promo video. And this is another topic I want to hit on in this session with you. And so we did, it must have been 11 hours of filming. And then I had a sprained groin. It was all taped up, and I was having to do all this cool stuff. And then at the end of the day, he's on his ladder. We're in a soccer field with his assistant, and he's got his camera, and then he's asking me questions, kind of like what we're doing here.
Yeah.
For the promo video. Right. So and it was my first exposure of being taken through a process, and I would start talking and I like turn around, take 2, take 3, take 409. And I'm telling you,
it's happened to me plenty of times. Yeah.
there was a time, Ronnie, where I looked at him and I did I hate you right now. And I walked all the way to the other end of the field, and I had a cuss fest with myself, got real. And I said, okay, get your shit together, Steph. Right. So anyway, long story short, do a few more takes, get a whole bunch of more video clips. And so I was curious. So he had a brother working in Vancouver too, and they were going to handle my project together. So he calls me up and he says, Steph, I have your video. It's awesome. It's great. But I'll tell you this, it took us moving the world to edit you to make you look and sound good. Grabbing a little bit here, grab a little bit there. And he shovels the video over to me to watch, and I was like, well, I remember that day being quite different, but thank you, producers, for making me look damn good. So that's why I appreciate that story.
The exact same process, the exact same.
I appreciate that story. You go, okay, well, it doesn't have to be great all the way through, right? Let's hit the points that we want, and then that's the beauty about producing.
Exactly.
So, about technology, is there one technology better than the other? How expensive are these technologies? Obviously if you're going to be quality, right? Quality, right? I guess is what I'm driving, right? You get what you pay for, kind of thing. So that's one part I wanted to highlight is, what are your thoughts around technology? Are there better platforms than other? And what do you recommend?
What I recommend is, as far as DAWs, and DAWs are digital audio workstation. So that's the software you use to create, in a nutshell. So by me choosing one, and let me just preface this. I made mistakes when I first started. I bought Pro Tools. I had Logic and didn't really need Pro Tools. And the one I use is, the main thing I use is Logic Pro. So it's Garage. You heard of GarageBand.
Yep.
For Apple. So it's GarageBand's big brother.
Okay.
Just souped up more. So the advice I could give producers or people who are aspiring to do it now, you want to get a DAW that you can still create on it. And I don't want to bash any type of any DAW and things like that. I prefer Logic. I use Pro Tools, but back in the day, Pro Tools for me wasn't creative friendly. It was more mixing friendly.
Oh,
but
okay.
there weren't any tools in there where you can create. Where Logic, you can have a plugin where it's a Fender Rhodes keyboard, a virtual keyboard, and you can just put a part in that. Or you can, in Logic, you can plug in a guitar that you don't have to amp up your speaker cabinet in the studio. You just plug right in and get a virtual sound off of those things. So you want to get a DAW where the creative that so that the creative process doesn't have any hiccups in it. You just want to just keep it going. You want to keep it moving. Get one that keeps it moving. So Logic and Ableton Live are the two most popular. I haven't gotten into Ableton Live. I heard a lot of good things about it. That's a really big popular one as well. And you probably heard of Pro Tools like back in the day. Oh yeah, it's the industry standard and things like that. But you see on TV shows where they have the studio scene and Pro Tools is in the background, all this other shit. But now, these shows, now I'm looking and I'm seeing, like, it could be a studio scene. I'm seeing Logic in the background. I'm seeing Ableton Live in the background. And all of these musicians are seeing that now, or producers are seeing it now. Like, okay, so don't go by what's good for you. Don't go by what's the industry standard. If it sounds good, it sounds good. If it's good for you, it's good for you. And a lot of people think that they need to spend a lot of money being in a big studio, things like that. You don't. It's just gathering the knowledge on how to start a recording from beginning to end. If you have a good laptop, you can literally have a home studio for under $1,000, from $500 to $1,000, literally.
Really?
Yeah.
That
You
that
don't
that's
need, like, yeah, the
surprising.
brick and mortar. You don't need. You just need just a laptop, a mic, a good audio interface. The audio interface is the thing you plug into your computer to be able to record audio into the computer. That's it.
Wow.
That's it. You don't need like a $3,000-$4,000 mic, things like that. None of that. All the songs that you hear that I've done, I've mixed them at home. I don't have all the outboard gear. I don't have the analog gear. I mixed them with virtual plugins that are already in my DAW. That's it.
Wow. Okay, I'm surprised. I'm surprised. I thought it would definitely be a little bit more cumbersome than that as far as cost and whatnot. So, I guess somebody who has a creative bug, who loves music, can certainly start to acquire some of these things and tinker and play and produce, and just have
Yeah.
fun with it. So, you have your main platform that you spoke to. Now, do you have to do a lot of add-ons for this platform? Like, if you no,
Not
it comes like one big package and away you go.
comes one big package. That's it. Logic Pro is an Apple product, so it comes in one big package. And to date myself, I've been using Logic since before Apple bought them. That's how long I've been using, since 2002. So it was with a company that was in Eastern Europe. Logic was owned by a company called eMagic. And the people who are listening, they'll believe me, look that up. Look up an old YouTube video, Logic eMagic. That was before Apple bought them. That's how long I've been using it. But Apple pretty much kept the same platform with it. Kept the same. There's a few things they changed here and there in order to adapt to more on the modern aspect since 2002, but it's pretty much, it's
Wow,
still the same. You can record, mix, master, everything all in that one platform.
fascinating. So we have
Yeah.
Roger here saying you have to know your shit. No kidding. So speaking
Yeah.
of having to know your shit, Ronnie, all the things you've talked about started in 2002. Was much of this self-taught for you?
It was self-taught.
Not going to take courses and formal.
And it was a point where I was actually started to, and it was more so of the mixing aspect. It wasn't more so the production aspect. Because the mixing aspect to me was like, it was just crazy important, because that's the stamp that you want. Even though the song could be good, but if the mix isn't right and it isn't tight, then it's what it is. I probably don't even need to explain it any further than that. But it was more so I taught myself, and it was trial and error. And anybody who's listening right now, and I don't want them to get intimidated by, man, I don't know how to mix. How do I get started and things like that? It's pretty much in that. And I wish I made it more simplified for me when I first started. It's pretty much just getting certain things out the way, so other things can come through. And everybody knows what an equalizer is, right? When you EQ a vocal, you know how to take, if this vocal has too much bass in it, roll off. So it's just little simple things that when you listen to YouTube tutorials and things like that, they make it sound complicated, but in your mind, you got to dumb it down and simplify it. And that's what I did on it. And I get like crazy compliments now, because when I have artists come in and we do a song and and we lay the vocals down and I give them a reference mix and they're like, "That's your reference mix?" Like, yeah, just a little janky little reference mix. Like, yeah, that's the reference mix. Okay. That's not the final. Like, no, I really have to tweak it. And it's like, okay, so that hard work that I put in and teaching myself that is paying off.
Wow.
That aspect.
Oh man, something just went off in my head like a gong. The part that you said around is, learning the mixing part in order to make a song or a track really what it should be, what it could be.
Mhm.
I'm
Yeah.
just wondering how many songs or tracks ended up in the garbage in the years of music because they just weren't mixed right, that they lost their opportunity to be tight and
Yeah.
amazing and incredible. That's what I
It-
took out of what you just said about the mixing part. I'm like,
yeah.
wow, must be a lot of songs that never got a chance because they just
You
weren't mixed
you
right.
have to learn. And when I first work with an artist, and it's like, and before I work with an artist, let me hear what you're doing right now. And it's not to judge or anything. Just want to hear where they're going, like as far as what they're doing. And they'll have a track that they did, and it's on iTunes, on Spotify, and things like that. Um, I guess the main thing that they did, they paid all the money to go into the studio with the big mixing board. They're on Instagram. Like, yeah, I'm in the studio. They're doing the selfies. They see the big board, all this other stuff. But what they have to realize, you're just paying to lay the vocals down. You're just paying to be in that studio, and that engineer is like, okay, they're not getting the best out of your performance. They're hitting record, and once you're done, they'll give you the session and send you on your way. But what they have to realize is it's a final process to it. It's more so than the aesthetics. It's more so than looking good on the gram or whatever. So I see these artists, and I'm like, okay, so weren't you in the studio when you did this song? It wasn't mixed, and it's not to the artist's fault. It's a process of them learning these things.
Right.
And I tell artists, and I'm totally honest with an artist, and I tell them, really, if your vocal attack, and if you could be critical on the takes that you do, you don't even have to be in here with me when you do those vocals. You can record those vocals on, get your laptop, I'll send you the track. You can record those vocals and send those vocals to me, and I'll make it do what it do.
Okay, perfect segue. Perfect segue.
Mhm.
Because one of the questions I had for you now, I got to try and latch onto a couple of the things that you said. One before, because I wrote down this working with you remotely, if that's an opportunity for somebody who's watching
Yes.
this, at some point we'll get into that and what that looks like. Is I know it's not cheap and it shouldn't be cheap. I think I've always been willing to pay for the value of someone's work when I recognize that I'm working with the right dude or gal. Hands
Mhm.
down. I don't dicker over the sticker price, right? Because I've lost
Right.
a lot of
Right.
money trying to cut corners or, thinking, oh, this person's going to get me there. So there's a price tag that comes with an artist wanting to get that song or album to fruition. And
Mhm.
they're having to find the financial, the vein for that.
Yeah.
And you spoke
Yeah.
about somebody going in and they just lay down the tracks that it wasn't mixed. So there's a experience and learnings that come from that. But at the same time, there must be, painful moments where you lost some money. So these artists have lost some money because they're
Yeah.
excited and there's the promised land of, these people saying they're going to get you where, make it do what it do, which is what you're saying.
Right. Right.
So there must be a big part of you up front when you're sitting down and consulting with somebody. Let's say I come to you and I say, hey, Ronny, I got your name from such and such, or I saw some of your work. Obviously there's that collaboration process that starts and you're like upfront, which is great. I love how upfront and honest you are about the whole thing. And if I was any artist, I'd be wanting to work with you in a heartbeat. Just everything you've shared so far, what I really love. So that being said, segue, I was curious around remotely, right?
Mhm.
I was listening to a song. I think hopefully I get it right. It was on the radio last week, Blackwater, Doobie
Mhm.
Brothers. And
Mhm.
the last year, relaunched their song Blackwater, but they were all in different parts of the world.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what? And so they said, listen to this song. They said, actually, they think the harmonies are better than the original, which I was like, okay, well, hold on. Let me be the judge.
Yeah.
So I'm listening to this thing. And
it's hard to debate a Doobie Brothers harmony. You know, it's like, okay.
Right? I'm like, I'm no pro, but damn. And that was all done like remotely in different parts of the world. So that's crazy. So somebody wants to work with you remotely, they can.
Yeah, they absolutely can. They absolutely can. There's a Canadian artist that I'm working with right now, and I actually have to finish up a track that I did with her. I sent her a track she did remotely. The next Trixie Fender EP I'm working on. She bought a device that's called the Isotope Spire. Little box. It's got a studio dynamic mic get built inside, and those vocals were all remote. It was all remote. And if you go back and listen to maybe like the Instagram post on the newest Trixie Fender stuff I did for her, it's all remote.
Really?
It's pretty much all remote. And what makes it's a difference with working. The pros and cons of working with people remote. It depends on the artist that you have, because nothing beats the one-on-one and them being in there and you're giving them their guidance on like vocally and things like that. But if you got somebody who gets it and they can do those vocals remotely, man, it's crazy. And then you can and they send them to you. You can just do your thing from that aspect of it, and just get back with them and say, hey, you know what? I love what you did, but can you send me a little bit of ad libs, or I'm hearing an overdub on this. So it's two sides of the coins on it, but things can definitely be done. It can definitely be done. The next Trixie Fender EP, about 90% of that was remotely.
That's fascinating.
Quite honestly.
That's fascinating. And I guess that's a real bonus for people like yourself, because you're not limited to your own demographic or what's close. So a couple of things, if I heard you correctly, it changes the context of productivity, if you will, versus being in the same space in the studio. The vibes are probably a little bit different. Productivity aspects a little bit different. But the fact that you can do it from anywhere and work from anywhere. If even somebody's on the road traveling, but you're working on a project, that person kind of boom, shoot it off to you. You do your thing. I think that's just absolutely marvelous.
It blows, and I do it, and it still blows my mind most of the time. And then there's another artist that I'm working with. His name is Shameg. He's a reggaeton artist.
Oh, cool.
I told you I'm like all over the place. When I say multi-genre, I'm multi-genre. Working on a track with him, he's in Miami. Spanish, all Spanish. Well, my wife's from Puerto Rico. My wife's Puerto Rican, so so yeah, it's like that influence. Is every type of musical influence. But working with him remotely from Miami, he's sending me vocals, and music is music. He's singing in all Spanish, man. But I know exactly what he's doing and where he's going with it, because the communication and music, that's a global language.
Absolutely.
It's a global language. So the form is the same. That's just it.
Well, you touch on something cool, because I don't have to hear the lyrics or understand the language, but I've danced to all kinds of genres of music, not knowing what's being said, but it's like, shit, this is the bomb. This is great. So another thing of that universal language that I think really brings people together. I think it's a glue in a lot of instances for cultures and people. Another topic I want to touch on is how do you make a business of this, but I want to save that for a little bit later. So here's another picture you sent me, and just trying to be random. So you sent me this one. I actually love life and R&B. That's super cool. So if you want to chat a little bit about this, that'd be much appreciated.
Man, that is a project, the Jay Daphne project I did probably about 2 to 3 years ago. That album, as far as the genre of soul R&B to date, is the greatest work I've done, because that whole EP or album or whatever anybody wants to call it, this girl or this woman, that's my sister, man. She's phenomenal. She's sensational. Well, not sister, but that's what's,
Persistent.
we're that close. That it's some people who you just who you click with as far as production,
Yeah.
and it's just a marriage. It's just people who you click. It's people who you click with, just like that. So when you get a chance, I'll send you tracks. She released about 2 to 3 tracks off that EP already, and I'll send you the rest of the EP. If you love just straight, man, just R&B,
Oh
just
yeah.
some just some just some grits and gravy, like that Sunday that Sunday dinner, man, like that R&B. Yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
hit me up.
yeah. That's that's
Absolutely.
that's what you that's what you that's what you want to listen to, like by far. And the part and again, remotely. She's from Chicago, so that project wasn't a project at first. We did a lot of tracks together, and then next thing we knew, we almost had an EP. So she wanted to do an album, but by that time, her and her husband moved to Atlanta, and I would probably say the last maybe 3 to 5 tracks on that album we did remotely, and and honestly, the ones we did remotely, I want to say those are the best tracks on that album, on that EP.
Really?
Yeah, yeah, those are the best ones because, and I don't want to get into her head, but this is my take on
Great.
it. This is my take on it. She wasn't here. She wasn't home. Chicago was home, so she wasn't here. And I think if you're away from um, sometimes your family and the elements and the things that you love and things like that, they get you in a different headspace. It gets you in a different headspace. So performance wise, that's how she took it. It was a track that I sent to her, um, that she released called "I Can't Wait to Love You," and she actually released that. So it's actually on Apple Music, Spotify, things like that. So J Daphne, "I Can't Wait to Love You." And the funny part about that track, and we were talking about the creative process, I was on a drum set in my studio, electric drum set. Just plugged it in. I didn't even use the sounds on the drum on the electric drums. I used the sounds out of Logic. So I used an old Beatles um, Liverpool kit
Nice.
that sound more R&B. It was crusty. The crusty drum sounds, old vintage. So I heard a Fender Rose loop, and I'm just playing drum. I wasn't making a track. Let me keep this in mind. I wasn't making a track. You just putzing around. I'm playing drums, and I'm hearing this loop, and I'm like, holy shit! Wait, hold on. I might be able to do something with this. So I just recorded that, and I'm not a drummer. I'm good for like 8 bars. And I'll lay it down. That's it. So thank God we go back to technology. So I recorded MIDI, quantize it. It's tight. You think I'm the best drummer in the world. I'm not. So I sent her this track. This she messaged me back telling me that she loves it. Blah blah. You hear that before? They love it, man. Her husband recorded her session. She sends me these vocals back, man, and I'm just blown away. They did it on a Pro Tools session, and I just extracted the vocals from the Pro Tools session. And man, look up that song,
Okay.
and you'll see that's the story behind it. It's crazy.
Just writing it down before I get. Can't wait to love you.
Yep.
Awesome. That's a great story. Love that. So you touched on, well, you said probably the best 3 tracks. And so she was more alone, like she was away from family, you said. Did I get that right?
She was Yeah, she was just
Okay.
her and her husband. She moved to Atlanta for an opportunity, 9 to 5 job opportunity, and probably just to see where they can, if they want to be outside of Chicago, which I don't want to get in their head. Is just, my take
Yep.
on people move for different reasons. But yeah, yeah, it was crazy. Most of the album we did here, and then and again, it goes to show you, like, some tracks as far as R&B are timeless. So they don't have a date. When you listen to them, it depends on the elements you use on the songs and stuff like that. They don't have a date to them.
Right.
So maybe about 80% of that album was done maybe like 2 years before, and we added the last 3 to 5, maybe like at the tail end. So we were looking through songs every day, like, what about this song? And I was like, yeah, we did this a few years ago. We listened back. We didn't have to change nothing on it.
Wow.
And I'm listening to these things. I'm like, okay, yeah. like because like those ingredients that we used kept kept up over that time.
Timeless,
And yeah,
timeless.
and then and then it's other R&B like 90s R&B or maybe like the New Jack Swing and things like that. They sound dated, and you could tell it's like, oh, you just want that sound back. But it's like the just straight vintage R&B, and you can listen to it now. Just take Silk Sonic for instance, man. Silk Sonic with Bruno Mars, and
Yeah.
they're doing, man, they're just using the old formula. They're using the old formula, and people are rocking to that like it's brand new, and it is not. And I love what they're doing with that, and they're just putting like lyrically, they're just putting that spin on it. But man, like that those chord progressions, that sound, those ingredients, that's all old school R&B. Period.
And you touched on, I think, what is one of the, I don't know, the biggest interest for me, what we talked about before going live was timeless. What stands the test of time and what
Yeah,
comes around again. And I remember over the years, I'd see a kid wearing 12-year-old kid wearing a Led Zeppelin t-shirt, and I'm like,
yeah,
dude,
yeah.
dude, even know Led
Like what you
Zeppelin?
know about Led
Give me
Zeppelin?
2 songs. So of course the kid names me 5. So okay, I'll shut up now.
Right.
I'll shut up now. Well done, well played,
Uh-huh.
kid. Awesome. But yeah,
Right.
it's again going back to, I'm always fascinated what makes these songs timeless, right? You say people using an old recipe and trying to use it and make it new and putting their own spin and brand on it, but there's something about the magic in the production of these songs that
Hmm.
make them just unshakable.
Yeah,
Another 100 years, 200 years from now, there'll be
exactly.
more 12-year-old kids wearing Led Zeppelin, Deep Purple, Pink Floyd, you name it, and it goes on.
Hmm.
So that's
Yeah,
really, really super cool that you brought that forward as a as a as a mention. Because
absolutely.
and when you look at artists and athletes, I'm sure there's that piece where that isolation that they need to have sort of clarity of goal, right? So it makes sense
Hmm.
being away from family. I remember, the Rocky Marcianos of the world and whatnot. They like go off and isolate themselves to prepare for that big fight or that big event. And I
Yeah,
look at having to record music, a song, as a big event
yeah.
every time because
Hmm.
you're trying to crush it. You're trying to
Exactly.
trying to kill it, right?
Yeah.
So remotely, so awesome. Glad to hear that because anybody who wants to work with this man can do it from the peak of Tibet if they've got good Wi-Fi. Um,
Absolutely.
so another thing I was curious about is it's obviously a business, right? Started
Yeah.
in 2002, and you're cutting your teeth on it and going, okay, self-teaching yourself, which I have an immense amount of respect for, and then looking to make it as a revenue stream, an income stream, because there's nothing better than doing what you love and getting paid for it. I know what
Right.
that's
Exactly.
like. And there's a lot of people who want and wish and strive to be able to do that, be the man, not working for the man. So I guess this is a multi-layered question for you
Hmm.
is to get into the business, what are the pitfalls and challenges and what have you tried and let go of and what's a good, I wouldn't say because everybody's journey is very different, but if you've had
Yeah.
to package kind of like a how-to or music production for dummies. Hate to use that, but I think you know what I'm getting at. So, what
Yeah.
would
Yeah.
be your
Absolutely.
recommendations to somebody who wants to make a go at this as a business?
The main thing you have to do in order to make money in it at first on the music side is to, just to put it bluntly, is to not make money in it, and you make money in it at first, because you have to um, build up your library of artists that you work with. So a lot of the artists, a few of the artists that I'm working with, maybe like Jay Daphne. Jay Daphne, it was more so, that's my friend. We're like family. She comes in, we do it. Nothing monetary involved in that with her, but when they hear this, that builds that. It's like, okay, this is what this cat can do
Right.
now. So you want to build your library up, and you want to build your relationships, and build something that you can show people, hey, this is what I've done. Because if you go into things monetarily and don't have, especially doing music, man, because um, music is subjective. People are finicky on what they think sounds good. Everything's always somebody's opinion. Or they always want to try and go to they always want to try to go to the least or the cheapest option. but you want to do things to show them that the cheapest option that you're doing is not always, it's not the best option, because this is what I bring to the table. So you might have to say, for instance, with production, you may have to throw production in with your price, with the mixing and mastering,
Okay.
in order to get it started. So there's some sacrifices that have to be involved in it in order to make money. And then as you grow this clientele and you grow this relationship that you have with this artist, and say, hey, you know what, I know I've been putting the, you know, the production and the mixing with it, but I might have to start charging a little bit more for the mixing because I've been getting a little bit busier with these artists. So it's a progression. And I think if you're business minded, you'll know at some point. But you have to, it's more bartering before you start making money on it in the beginning. And then it builds from that standpoint. And honestly, it could be more of the money standpoint with me, because it's, you know, doing it, I wish I could just give up my 9 to 5 and do this all the time. But, you know, it's never enough, but that's the goal. And that's what you want to keep, you know, that's what you want to keep striving at. And at some point, people see the passion that you have in it, and they don't mind doing business with you because they see the passion, because the passion is infectious. If you love what you're doing. And if you bring something to the table with someone where it's monetary at first, you want it to be monetary, and you want to get paid for what you're doing, but it's kind of like that fine line, if I'm making sense. So you don't want it to be to, hey, where's my money at? You know, you want the creative process to be the creative process, and you want the creative process to be comfortable and fun for everybody. And if you make that fun for everybody, it gets a person in the mindset, hey, I don't mind giving this cat this because he does this, this, and that for
me. Yeah. Wow. I'm pausing because you validated a lot of things for me in what you just shared. I went through all of those hurdles. I've been a strength and conditioning coach for 20 years, and working with, you know, athletes at every level, working with all walks of life.
I saw one of your old pictures and I was like, come on, man. Like, when is my turn? Like, that's you?
That was me, man. That was me. Sometimes I throw those up there to just remind myself.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember that. I commented on one of them.
I said, I throw those up there to say I put in the work, man. Like, and that was it. You know, touching on that, right? It's that credibility piece, and
put in that work.
Everything you said is like, oh man, lapping it up, like, oh, it's like chocolate cake, because validating. In the beginning, I did a lot of pro bono. In the beginning, my prices were really low. In the beginning, I gave away the farm, and it was, you know, there's a few things in conflict there. One was, you know, self-confidence and believing that I was worth it and whatnot. And then your personal brand, and you're working hard and showing up and delivering consistency, and going through, you know, the evolution of starting to, hey, yeah, I've worked with certain people. Then you get your first, let's say, pro athlete, or first person that's a little bit, you're good enough to work with that person. Okay, so it starts to garner you more attention, but you've done the work, man. It's like you're grinding, and you're working.
Absolutely.
And to get to that point where literally I was at a point in my career where I could pick and choose who I want to work with. And that was super cool for me. And but I reminded myself that I did the work. The other thing that you said is, you know, having that passion. People see through that, whether you're genuine or disingenuous about the love for what you do and wanting to serve, what you said, wanting to serve, which is such a beautiful thing that you commented on earlier. And because the struggle I see with people, and I've done a lot of work with people who wanted to take their craft as a strength and conditioning coach and make it a business, because it was very transient, dime a dozen, man. Like, you know, long hours. And oftentimes it's, you know, little pay and whatever until you kind of get there. But you got to be willing to get there. Is you touched on the business side of it. Being business minded is what you said. There's a lot of people out there that are great at their craft and what they do, but they never get there because they're not good business people. And that's why I asked you the question, why my curiosity was there about that question is, you are where you are, not only because you're masterful at what you do and you're great. And I mean, it comes through in everything that you say, but there's the business side. You had to make it a business where you are upfront and you sit down with someone and you go, hey, this is how I roll. This is what, you know, kind of the package. These are my costs. And you know, talk about the costs, and especially no surprises, right? You know, so many times I've had people go, yeah, like then I got hit with this bill, let's say, for this, and I didn't see it coming or whatever. So you can tell that you've done a lot of work, and you've been very
Yeah.
committed to what you do and working with other people. So I appreciate
Yeah.
you sharing that for the audience, because yeah, man, it's one thing to be good at what
Yeah.
you do.
And and to keep it real, man, like talking money is all it's money is always an uncomfortable conversation for everybody. Is let's just be real with that. It is. And in the beginning, I wish I was more business minded with it in the beginning. But I'm glad I approached it the way I approached it, because it it honed my craft and people see the passion in it. Because I think it's a fine line with monetary, where you can make it too monetary, and then it just shows in the work. It doesn't show the passion
Yeah.
or anything like that. So you have to be careful in it, but yet you still want to be rewarded for what you do at the same time. So um, it's not a way to say or to give people anybody advice one way or the other. It's just the way I've approached it, and you just have to constantly stay cognizant on, hey, if you're doing, even if you're like, say if like money is involved, if you're doing something pro bono, um, you have to make sure that you work with artists that are committed with it. Don't make it a hobby, because that will don't work with artists that is just a hobby for them, because that at the same time stains your brand, um, for the most part, because if they're not committed, then you're not going to have anything, or you're not going to have a body of work to show what you've done. So just a double-edged sword.
Wow, that little
Mhm.
nugget there is gold. When you
Yeah.
say only work with people who are committed, yeah, that makes complete sense. And again, I've
Mhm.
got my stories too. Absolutely. I mean, if you don't have somebody who's committed to you and to the process, you're never going to get there, right? And then you're going to look like you're just playing around, and it being a hobby. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
that's a powerful insight for people. But and it's also qualifying that, right?
Yeah.
You got to smell bullshit. Okay, I'm just gonna
Mhm.
bullshit.
Yeah.
I've worked with a
Oh
lot of
no. Yeah.
clients. Like, I'm ready to do
Yeah.
this, Steph. I'm ready to do this. I'm ready to commit.
Mhm.
3 or 5 times a week. Let's do this. Whatever. Okay, you go through
Right.
everything. You got the
Right.
consult, and within that consult, that probably with time, you start learning to ask some very good questions.
Right.
They gotta go, yeah, yeah, you're really
Mhm.
not this, you're really not, really committed. So that's an important one for people to walk away with too as well.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And the thing is, like with me, and I know life happens. You work with artists, they might have a 9 to 5 and things like that. But I say this to say that actions speak volumes.
Mm.
And if you keep a communication with me, hey, you know what? I know we're trying to finish this song. Hey, Ronnie, hey, this is what's going on. Boom, boom. That plays a whole lot than for me to not hear anything for like weeks and weeks, and then just say, hey, I'm ready to get back in. It's like, it's like, okay, well, no, well, doing what you do, you know that. It's a
Honoring
good
the
thing. And more so for you, because of the training and everything that you did. That communication is key.
Yeah, you know what, Ronnie, thank you for that. There's been a lot of hard conversations in my work,
Yeah.
and holding
Hmm.
accountability to the plan, right? Is holding
Yeah.
that accountability, where it's like, hey, we entered into a contract and we've decided on XYZ that we were going to do this, and this was going to
Yeah.
be the process, and we're not going to get there unless we go through the process.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I know that
Yeah.
I'm willing to take the shirt off my back, and I'm willing to meet you halfway on the dance floor so we can make this dance happen. But
Hmm.
you gotta show up to the dance floor, man. I can cue the
I
music.
love that. I love that.
You gotta
I
dance.
love that.
Because
Hmm.
what I enjoyed the most, thanks for bringing that up. I enjoyed the most, because I'm
Yeah.
having flashbacks and laughs with people, is I would go through a consultation, talk about, the recipe, what we're going to do. And of course, getting them to buy into me and my passion and my trust, everything you've highlighted so well for our audience. And I would say, you know what, Ronnie, what's great, these 3 days a week for the next year is going to cost you approximately $18,950. And they go,
Hmm.
damn. And I go, the kicker here, the rub is you got to do all the
Yeah.
work. You got to do all the work. I can't lift the weights for you. I can't.
Exactly.
You got to do the
Exactly.
work.
Right.
Keeping it real.
where does this? But where does that stem? Like, here's where that stemmed from, though. The inconsistency is like it is. Here's where you got to put a price on it, though. So if you put a price on it, they're not going to have a choice but to commit to it. But at the same time, with what you are representing to your experience, is like, okay, so if you don't come to this dance floor, I'm not going to have I'm doing it pro bono. You're not going to come to this dance floor. I'm not going to have an end product. Therefore, I can show other people who I am going to be charging, and that's hindering my progress.
Right.
So it's a fine line where you have to be careful on the pro bono stuff. That you have to make sure you're working with committed people on the pro bono side. So it's especially like, man, fitness. Come on, man. You
Really?
get people like after one workout, they get ready.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know what? I've had my trip, slips, and falls, Ronnie, in learning to hone my business mind, and that's where you sit down and you're quicker to set clear expectations, not just setting expectations, but clear ones, but on both sides of the aisle, right? It's kind of like, hey, this is what I'm going to do for you. What do you expect from me, right? What do you expect from me? And they have their laundry list, and you go, cool, I can meet you on those, no problem. I will show up. Now, this is what I need from you. So then when you have that little glitch in the person, if you will, and they're canceling on you, and you're like, okay, like you said, life gets in the way. I get it. Is also being able to have that conversation maybe after session number 2 canceled, right? You can liken it to your world. And then you go, hey, just want to revisit what we chatted about. So is it still work for you? Is it still good for you? Because it's also, they don't see, because people are selfish, right? We're inherently selfish. It's kind of like they say, you're at a wedding and then there's a picture that comes out and gets sent to you. Who do you look for first in that wedding picture, Ronnie? Damn, I mean, I would look for you too with a beard like that. I mean, shit, absolutely, all eyes on you, right? We're selfish, and it's being able to construct a relationship with your artist or your client, where there's that environment of trust and vulnerability to be able to say, hey, you know what? Like you said earlier, as long as you communicate to me, as long as you communicate. But if I'm chasing you, you're hurting my business. You're hurting my jam, right? So you said so many amazing things. So another question I had for you is, so artists today, really, because you're able to do almost anything from your home or remotely, they look to launch their tracks, their songs, their albums on, you mentioned Apple Music and Spotify. So I guess those are the main mediums and avenues for artists out there today.
Yeah, well, in order for artists to get their music on those streaming platforms, there's one company, or maybe two companies. I forget the other one. There's CD Baby, but the main one I use is DistroKid. DistroKid is a company that you upload your tracks, you upload your album art, you upload, like, there are the split sheets involved on who gets credit for what.
Oh, okay.
And they in turn do the work for you to get that project uploaded to all the streaming services. Could be anything, could be Amazon Music, Apple Music, Spotify, Tidal, all those places. So that's how they artists get their songs and albums and EPs and singles all on those platforms through that one main hub or through that one company.
Okay. So again, that's the side of the business that if you don't know, you just don't know, right? And so
right. And that's one part that you really have to know. DistroKid is one. CD Baby is another. I forget the other one. It might be Interview Nervous that is slipping my mind, but yeah, there's a few to get your music out there. And you can even upload those songs and say, hey, and put it in the system where I want to release this album January 1st. And it's on those streaming platforms January 1st. Sometimes it's on there maybe a couple of days before, but if you know January 1st, don't say anything about it. You see it on there, but don't announce it yet. But yeah, I've seen that with some artists, and I released a single that I produced, and I say, yeah, like, yeah, I'm releasing it on this day, and I see it 2 days before. I'm like, oh, it's on here already. So yeah, it's that's the main way to do it. And it's just a way to get everything out there, and then there's other ways with those companies that get your music out there. You can set it up where you can get paid for your YouTube streams and
Okay.
things like that. It's endless. It's endless for the artist. It depends on what they want to do and what they want to pay for. I would say this, as far as money, the best streaming platform from what I hear to make money from your streams is Tidal,
Really?
believe it or not, more so than Spotify. That's the word on the street.
Wow.
That's the word on the street because Apple Music, let's be honest. To be honest, you need maybe like a billion streams in order to make a lot of money.
Okay.
Really now for artists, it's really now in order to get a deal, or if you want a deal, or if you want to be a little bit more successful independently, is your social media presence and it's your musical product. And quite honestly, your social media presence is could be way more important than your music.
Crazy how that is, eh?
It's crazy nowadays. It's
Yeah.
crazy how that is. You can have a big social media presence, and you can recreate Jack and Jill went up a hill nursery rhyme song, and that'll be a hit. Even though Jack and Jill went up a hill is boring as shit, but because you got that social media presence and you did that, you're gonna have like a billion streams on Spotify. It's crazy.
I'm so glad you went there because
Yeah.
there's stuff out there, man. There's stuff out there.
Yeah.
You see how many followers these cats
Yeah.
got and
Yeah.
what they put out there, even as far as music or content. And
Yeah.
you're like, I
Mm-hmm.
don't get it, but they're making boatloads of money. And then I sit
Making
here and I
boatloads
go,
of money.
I'm doing something wrong. Maybe I'm I'm boring, maybe I'm just boring. But I mean, I'm not leading out of the gates and I never have. You touched on it. I'm never leading out of the gates trying to monetize something. I just don't.
Yeah.
It's never been my DNA to do that. But I'm glad you brought that up because I'm sure it's a question for whoever may want to visit this content is to look at, well, how do I monetize myself? Right. So I guess
Yeah.
through depending on the arrangement between like a Spotify or an Apple Music, like you mentioned, I guess it's like a royalty you get for each stream or something like that. Like,
Yeah, there's pennies, on the dollar you get for each stream.
okay.
Um, and there was a rumor going around maybe like a couple of years ago with the Pharrell song "Happy." As popular as that song was, and the rumor was, like stream wise, you would think he would do like billions and billions, like because of streaming. You think because it's pennies, it's not as much as you think it is.
Right.
Even though it's way more money than what we were. But when you think like categorically, the way that song did, as far as what it did streaming from what they said, and then like I said, I don't want to start room, but this is from what I hear.
Yeah.
It wasn't as much as you think that it would be, which is insane. So back in the day when you were signed with the label, you get money up front, but the thing is, you have to pay all that back. So the studio time. So you think you're rich because they're giving you like $200,000 up front.
Yeah.
But they recoup all that back in your sales and all this other stuff. So time went on, technology advanced. Okay, so you don't need to be a signed artist, you're independent. So you get these streaming services. But the downside is back in the day, you're getting paid for the single, so you're getting a couple of bucks per single or per album, which equates to a lot of money. But you're a slave to the label. Fast forward to now with modern technology, you don't have to be signed to the label. You're getting streams, but you only get pennies on the dollar now.
Right.
That's the difference.
And that's where there's a huge contrast. And having worked with one producer, and he was way back in the day, so he would always talk about his royalties, right, for this and this, and so it was always set up in a way where the dollars were pretty good for this guy. And I also worked with a drummer for a pretty popular Canadian band, and we became buddies, hung out a lot. I got to see him work on his drum kit, so that's why I was so jazzed about having this conversation with you today and seeing it through your lens. He said, he goes, Steph, I don't make any money recording music and going to the studio for our albums. He goes, that's why we tour. He goes, that's where
there's the touring.
He goes,
that's where the money. I was just gonna say that it's the touring. It's the touring now. It's the song being played on a TV show on Netflix and things like that. You know, it's those type of things that you have to figure out the back way of making money on those songs. Like I want to bring back look Pharrell's Happy. Okay. Like when you think monetary streams, he didn't make it, but he made a shitload of money like it being played everywhere.
Right.
But as far as like streams, from what I hear, yeah.
And you
Not
get
even a
paid.
comparison when you think as
Yeah.
popular as that song was.
Yeah, and it's crazy. Then they'll, if your song, your product's doing really well, and it's getting a lot of hits, then that's where they attach ads to it, right? And that's where that money comes in because
Exactly. That's where
it
the money came
creates
from, I'm pretty sure.
traffic for that party or that other party, right? So it's an interesting.
Hmm.
It's great. You know, business is a fascinating thing. So, what's next for you, Ronnie? What's next for you?
What's next for me? I was what's next is the new Trixie Fender project, which I'm finishing up. XO Chicago's project is getting ready to come out. We're finishing that. Well, actually, I finished that up. I'm finishing up Trixie Fender's project. So those are the main two things. And for me, for 2022, it's more the focus on, and I want to do this. I want to get out my own comfort zone to get my TikTok um, profile up. And as far as like little tutorials on how to's and things like that, I want to start doing that. I'm a little bit more modest. So when you hear yourself, it's like, oh man, I hate to hear myself talk. It's like, oh, this is what you do. Oh, this is how you record vocals in Logic. You know, it's like, man, that sounds ridiculous. What is this? But as you said earlier, it's a performance. So I have to get out of my own way with that, you
Yeah,
know, and get that stuff done. And part of me is like, man, it's like a billion cats out here giving you how to's.
yeah.
And and at the end of the day, you know, how am I going to stand out on my how to than somebody else's how to?
I love the candor in that because it rounds the corner on much of what we said, right? Is you got to promote yourself. And if we talked
Hmm.
about that on Creative Edge with Mickey Mickelson, he's a
Yeah.
publicist for books, and his authors will be like, yeah, you know, I'm good with the writing the book part, but you want me to do a televised interview? Do you want me to sit on a panel? Do you want me to do a radio spot? Like, oh man, no, I want to
Yeah.
run for the hills. And like you said, and that's why I appreciated your honesty there. Is going when you mentioned TikTok, I was like, oh yeah, I just started tinkering with that too. And I'm like,
Yeah.
how
Yeah.
many platforms, how many social media opportunities do I have to juggle? But
Yeah.
you're right,
Yeah.
man. It is
I
what it
totally
is.
suck at my TikTok, man. It's like I gotta get that. I gotta get that up, like for real, like to do that. And I think that'll be a great platform, just like I said, the how tos and things like that. You know, just my spin on it. And I think like I'm a critical thinker, but I could be too much of a critical thinker because I see these things and it's like, okay, I already know this. And so like a lot of billion more people know how to record vocals in Logic. It's like, okay. So, you know, it's just me figuring out what do I bring, what flavor do I bring to that?
Later,
That
yes.
same thing, you know, that same thing, but what do I bring to it? So,
Yeah. What makes you
but
you?
that any
And I think you'll never go wrong, Ronnie, just having spent this time with you today, that your flavor is absolutely just master class. It means you're a clock guy. You know, we truly are.
man, that's why I got you, man. Look.
You know, and when we came on studio, I laughed, and you know, this show's about you, not about me. And you know, I'm sure people who know me and know Faya, there it is. You know, it's just about saying no to the haters and
Yeah.
the people who just don't believe in you. That it's a positive mantra, man. Like, so I
Yeah,
appreciate
yeah.
that.
When I saw my hat, I'm like, I gotta wear this. I gotta wear this today, man. And shout out to Roger Casanova, man. Yeah, that's
Yeah. Let's see. I'm missing maybe the comments weren't. I ain't gonna show. What did Roger say? He said this earlier. I ain't gonna show people how to do. Okay. Yeah. Obviously, that was something that we said. Yes.
yeah,
And so, you know, rounding the corner here on our show is again, how do we know each other, right? This is the first time Ronnie and I actually chat, actually
yeah,
talk outside of sending each other messages through Instagram. And we met speaking about business networking.
yeah, yeah.
And that's where social media plays a powerful tool.
It
Roger,
does. It
Roger
does. It
Casanova
does.
did your branding. And then when I was, you know, looking online and seeing, you know, and I found Roger and, you know,
Yeah.
we got a fourth project in the bag. It talks about that relationship, talks about trust, everything we've talked about. And it's no wonder that you and Roger know each other. It's just, it's everything's interconnected so far with the seven
Yes.
episodes. Everything's interconnected.
Hmm.
Thanks for sharing what you have next. So if you were to leave the audience with a couple of nuggets, a couple of takeaways, like tools and fuels, things that have meant a lot in your life, doesn't even have to be about music. It just could just be like saying, hey, this is what I think, this is what I feel, and these things are important to me. I'd love to hear that.
Man, like besides music, which like the past like over an hour or so that we've been talking about, I'm real passionate about um, relationships, family, honesty, compassion is real important to me. Um, Knowing people on a level where I know where I can say, hey, I can call you my friend.
Mm.
And that's not a word that I use lightly. Um, and I know like with what I do, it's like people, reach out to you and things like that because you have a certain skill set. And that's just the nature of what we do. That's the nature of the business. But you really know a person's spirit when you talk to them and you get to know them. And you don't really have to talk to a person and know their spirit, man. Like us, man. I knew the type of cat that you are way before we even talked. You can catch a vibe if you really just sit back and 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 push back all of the bullshit. You can catch a vibe with somebody, and you know where their spirit lies.
Very cool. Very cool. I am cut of the same cloth. Thank you so much for that. So,
Mhm.
so rounding the corner of the show, again, just a huge humble thanks for your time today,
Well,
Ronny.
thank you. I appreciate it. I
Learned a tremendous
appreciate it.
amount, and I'm sure anybody else who's watching this. I mean, again, music is something it's a universal language. So watching the show, but more importantly, how it all comes together and how it all works right down to the business side of it. So thank you for those learnings. I really appreciate it. And I'll end off
Well,
with
thank
this.
you.
Look forward to the new year and more projects coming out. And I'll see you on TikTok, my friend.
Yes. That's the goal. That's the goal. 2022. Let's get it.
Okay, you got one last comment here. There you go. There you go. See the comment? Ask
No,
Ronnie
what is it?
how much he paid his beard to show up. Oh, Roger. That's
Is here
awesome.
for a short time only signing autographs, man.
Yeah. Don't worry, Roger. We'll invite you to the podcast about what it takes to grow an epic beard. Yeah, show up to yours, Sally. I struggle all the time. So
Well,
awesome.
I'm compensating because I don't have any hair on my head,
All right,
so
listen here.
it's gotta be.
I'll take. Look at that. See, I'll take the hat off. That's it. There it is. You know what they say? Grass doesn't grow in a busy street, brother. Grass doesn't grow in a busy street. Cheers. Take care,
I
brother.
love that. All
Take,
right.
take care.
Thanks, man.
We'll see
Appreciate
you
it.
soon.
Yes,
Thanks for your
sir.
time. Cheers.
All right.